My name is John Van Engen. I work for Computer-Aided Technology. Most of you guys would probably recognize us from CATI, or that would be our same company. I've been doing this now. This is my fourth SOLIDWORKS World. How many of you guys been in here more than one SOLIDWORKS trip? First one, huh? All right, that's good, that's good. Some of you guys look familiar to me. I've seen a few of you around before. Some of you might have been in Toolbox presentations I've done in the past, or maybe a routing demo or something like that. So it's good to see you back. And we're going to go over some toolbox configuration stuff. Some of it might be kind of basic for you. It's more of just a walkthrough on what exactly is in the toolbox, kind of how do you get to it. And I've got a couple of fillers in here too later on manual update and clearing toolbox flags, things like that. So we'll go ahead and get started here. All right, let's start with what is the toolbox. Toolbox is a fully integrated inside of SOLIDWORKS. It has a whole library of parts, fasteners, bearings. There's some structural steel and things like that in there as well. So that'll be in there too. So there we see our library of parts. These are drag and drop components, most of them. You'll pull them out of the library. They should fit and fall right into your part models. If you've used Hole Wizard holes, it should already know what fastener. You can use a different method for doing that, or you can do a drag and drop. Smart fasteners would be the automated method. Anybody in here using smart fasteners currently? Okay, so they're a little interesting. We're not really here to talk about those today, but more of the actual toolbox configuration. So this is a large database of files. It can be expanded by yourself or reduced in size, depending on how you want to deal with it. It's customizable. You can put your own part numbers and data in there that you want to have. Vendor information, vendor part numbers, things like that, so you can cross-reference on your own, and that can be done as well. It is available with SOLIDWORKS Professional and Premium. If you have SOLIDWORKS Standard, you will not have access to this tool. You still get the Hole Wizard. That's part of Standard SOLIDWORKS. It's technically part of the Toolbox. But the actual fastener portion of it, nuts, bolts, and whatever, you won't have access to. So if that's something that you'll be interested in, you'll need to talk with your VAR and upgrade at least one seat. Okay, where is the toolbox? Location, Design Library tab on the task pane. This is where you'll see it all the time. It's just a little stack of library books there, and then you'll see that's your design library. And then the little fastener there is your toolbox. And then you have your categories underneath that. These will be your standards. ANSI, inch, ANSI metric, ISO, DIN, whatever is in here. All right, so now we know where it is. How do we change it? So where are the locations for the configurator? There are 4 places for the configurator to be located in. You could locate it on the pull-down menu inside of SOLIDWORKS, Tools, Toolbox, Configure, or it is on your Start menu. Start button, navigate to your SOLIDWORKS folder, toolbox settings, and you can launch it right from there. Most commonly, we would see it inside of SOLIDWORKS on the options menu. Under the, you probably can't read that, but it's tools options or the options button, whichever you want to go to. Hole Wizard / toolbox, and there's a little button here that's highlighted on my screen in orange, configure. That button will not be highlighted on your machine, just on presentation here. And you can also just dig into the toolbox, find the fastener you're looking to configure, right-click on it, go ahead and configure, and it'll open up the configurator as well. So it's all over the place. You can get to it from everywhere. All right, where's the physical file location for it? The toolbox itself in a standard install will be on your C drive. see SOLIDWORKS data. It's helpful to me, and it'll probably be helpful to you guys. I'm sure at some point you've all run multiple versions or installed the test or upgrade or whatever. Do yourself a favor on install. Give it a special location. I typically put 2015 on the back of mine so that it doesn't choose a number for me, because it really doesn't help me to see Toolbox 1, 2, 3, 4. That doesn't tell me what version I'm dealing with. And then there's this big green checkbox here. What that says there, again, sorry about that, it's a little small. This is the default search location. Working the tech support side of things as I do, I get quite a few calls about this little particular checkbox. Most of the time, it's because people don't realize what it's doing, and by default, it's turned on. Okay. Well, pretty much it's what you want for the most part. If you've assigned a location, whether this be your C drive or maybe you've moved it to a network drive, you want your users getting the information out of your toolbox. Where it becomes tricky and interesting for users is they've decided, all right, I'm comfortable with this part. I made the size I want. Maybe it's a chunk of structural steel. It's probably where I see it the most. You configure it to a size that you want, and you save it off as your own part name, and you put it in your own library file somewhere. And the next time you open up your assembly, it doesn't work. And it goes back to some default size, or it's too big or too small, okay? That's got everything to do with this checkbox, okay? This checkbox recognizes a toolbox component. Whether you said it's still a toolbox part or not, it knows it's a toolbox part. Therefore, it will find out which toolbox part it was and go get it for you. Nice. Which it is in some cases. Or the other example is, let's say you get a pack and go from a customer. You guys getting assemblies from customers out there. All right, you get all their toolbox stuff and you open it up and all the fasteners are a mess. Everything's a big giant pile of bolts and stuff, and maybe it worked and the sizes are all good, but numbers are missing or whatever, BOMs are incomplete. Again, it's this checkbox, okay? So if you're working on bringing somebody's stuff in, you can temporarily turn this off in your personal user folder, your personal user computer. Just remember that you turned it off, okay? There is a few things to get around that, because it will find it if it's a toolbox part, unless the toolbox flag is removed from the part file. And we'll talk about that later. Well, I'll show you how to do that, okay? Now, there's been some people that I've had a customer a few years back that actually wasn't our customer. They were from Disney. I don't know if you guys are in here at all or not, but the Disney guys were putting it into EPDM and said, well, that flag thing is nice, but we have to take it off of every configuration when we put it into EPDM. So I thought about that for a while, and I do have an answer for that. If you guys have tried it and it doesn't work, we'll talk about another section where I can help you get that configured, okay? So there's a couple of moves for that. A small bit of advice. As always, please be sure to back it up before you mess around with it. And not only back it up, but take the whole folder. Your entire SOLIDWORKS data folder is necessary for me to fix it or anybody else to fix it for you, okay? Just the browser file isn't enough. Just your toolbox fasteners is not enough. We need the whole thing, okay? So back it up, just make a copy, zip file it somewhere. Even right next to it on the drive, just make a zip folder. It's fine, all right? That's all we need. But please do make sure to do that. All right, so let's actually get into the configurator. Once you open up the configurator, you'll have a home menu that contains links to the Hole Wizard, customize your hardware, define user settings, set permissions, configure smart fasteners. You'll also notice up on the end there, there's a little button up here for save and another one for home, and there's numbers tabbed at the top there too, which takes you to each of these sections. So you can either click on it in the home menu or the tabs up on top here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the save and home button. If your save button at work says log in instead of the little disk, it means somebody set your password. If you don't know it, maybe you're not supposed to. If you are the one that's supposed to and you still don't know it, now we've got a problem. So do make sure if you're taking over for somebody else on that, make sure they don't have that set. It can be an issue. Okay. All right, so once we're inside the Hole Wizard, this is just kind of breaking everything down here. This gives you the ability to control your standards. Each list of standards will be there, all of your different standards, and all of your folders are ready to go. As a Toolbox administrator, I urge you to strip this down to only the stuff you guys are going to use. One, if you're installation savvy, maybe you already got rid of this stuff. But if you didn't, you can do it here. And how you do that is by unchecking the little box next to each standard. And that goes further. Inside the Hole Wizard, once we choose a standard to go into, we can also restrict it by the type of hole or type of fastener. In this case, we're dealing with holes, so you could remove, let's say you never do countersink holes. It's just not in your job. Take it out of the box. Less stuff to look through, less stuff to dig into, less problems, right? And you can also copy these standards. The little button way up on top there is a little double folder. That allows you to copy the standard, and you can make your own group standard. You can call it Acme Toolbox, and then put all of your stuff in here. You can copy it, move it, and relocate it so it's just your guys' stuff. And then you can uncheck the rest of the toolbox because you're done with it. Unchecking it doesn't get rid of it, okay? It's still there. If you need to turn it back on, flick the checkbox back on, everything's good to go, all right? If you took it out during the install process, you'll have to actually physically go get your media and put it back on, okay? All right, inside that then, we narrow it down to the actual specific hole type and the hole information. Sizes, drill numbers, whatever you're dealing with in here. The first little dot here is where you actually add the new sizes to the toolbox. Let's say you're at, you want to add a special size drill. You click the little plus here, and that will give you a new box that looks like that. And that box gives you the ability to put your size call out in there, your diameter, and whether it's enabled or not, okay? The number 2 on the board up there is a checkbox reference to disable specific sizes. So maybe you don't want to get rid of the whole group, but you know you're never going to use more than 5 or 10 of these sizes. Go ahead and uncheck the rest of them, okay? Sounds like a lot of work, but, somebody's got to do it. All right, screw clearances. It's the next drop down in the standard properties. It does basically the same thing, except for it deals with your clearances. So you have an add button in the top of the row, and the fields to fill out for this are size, close fit, normal fit, loose fit, enabled, and diameter. Okay? Pretty simple stuff. It's not scary at all. All right. Hardware. Same process as your Hole Wizard. You're going to get a group of standards. You can turn off group of standards that you don't want. You may have different things in here that you do or don't use. Go ahead, feel free to filter these out. This is more or less where during the install process you will take a good chunk of this out of your install. If you're mass deploying over the network, you're going to want to have that install be as small as possible when you're delivering that, okay? Toolbox all together right now is right around 1.1 gig to 1.3 gig. Well, there's a lot of stuff in there you guys probably are never going to use. You peel it out before you push it, okay? So we can actually select a standard. Then you can remove each group that you want to do here and pull out the specific groups that you want, again, by checking the box or unchecking it. Next here we're down to the hex bolt. So now maybe you don't use a heavy hex, or maybe you don't use a hex finish bolt or whatever, you can uncheck that at this level. Now first off, this is a huge group of information. This fastener portion, there's a lot of data here, okay? And it can get massive in size of configurations as well. So I mean, just think about every diameter, every length, every thread type. It gets blown up in a hurry. And then if you start adding your own custom materials and things like that, this can get huge fast, all right? By default, when we go in here, it'll tell you right underneath the name, right up there, it'll say how many configurations are possible with this. Currently, this one says 8,094 possible configurations. I didn't even do anything to it yet, okay? All right, and then you go down, now you can start filtering sizes, or you can take out specific length, or you can take out specific thread data. Thread display. This one's actually probably one of the most important ones, okay? Thread display, anybody taking the advanced assembly class yet, or assembly, whatever, SOLIDWORKS assembly classes? Nobody? Couple of you guys. Remember talking about assemblies and they have a little blurb in there about fasteners? You remember what that says about having a schematic fastener in your assembly? The schematic thread right here is somewhere like 2 megabytes for a file size of just the one fastener. Okay? That's ridiculously big. Okay? There's no reason, unless you actually make fasteners, to have that on, okay? Nobody needs to see it, and it probably will yell at you, if not slap you, for having that in your assembly. So basically I try to tell everybody, just go with the plain one. You know, we all get it, it's a bolt, it's got threads on it, we know that. You can use a cosmetic thread. There's not nearly as much of a graphic impact as the schematic one is, but it does add a little bit. So right here, you can narrow your toolbox configurations down to a third if you remove these two, okay? So currently there's still 894. I didn't actually remove those, but it would be a third of that if you took those two check boxes off. Also, the configuration name, you'll see, you guys might not be able to see that here, but it says whatever the configuration name is, N, C, and S. N, none. C is cosmetic, S is schematic. All right, so there's 3 configurations of it for each size already, okay? You can also add color. Again, this may cause another configuration, so if you don't really have to change the color, unless you want to specifically say, oh, it's a yellow one, it's a brass screw or whatever, fine, go ahead and do it. But just keep in mind what you're doing with that. Some fasteners have additional information, such as drive type. These are socket head cap screws. We have a hex, a spline, a hex drilled 2, a hex drilled 6, then a hex drilled 4. You'd almost think that would be in order 2, 4, 6. It'd be a little easier, but 2, 6, 4, we'll take it. So that's your drive type there, and those can be reduced as well. That's just one fastener. That's got 5 different configurations times 3 different schematic type, you know, and it gets big fast. This one right by itself has 32,988 possible configurations, okay? But they're not all loaded yet. It only creates those as you insert the part. So when you use a part, you insert it, it creates the configuration on drop of that component, okay? So these are possible configurations. They're not necessarily loaded into the part ready to go, okay? All right. Custom properties. So we have our standard properties group, which we just went through, general, size, length, thread depth, all that was in the standard properties. Now we're going to talk about custom properties. Maybe you want to add material, vendors, whatever. Like I said, we can customize this. This little box up here, the big green check mark, this one, I typically recommend this for people. This specifies that you want each custom property to require a new configuration. Okay, so let's say I want to make zinc plated material, stainless steel screws. I'm going to set that box and then I'll get new designations for those. So if I were to fill it out, my property name that I want to add to the part is material. If I use the list option, SOLIDWORKS will give me this little thing here which says link to SOLIDWORKS materials. Okay, a little checkbox at the bottom there. Where is it here? There it is. List to or link to SOLIDWORKS material. That checkbox. You can actually pull it in and get your full material load from that. Maybe not be necessary on fasteners, guys. I really don't know if I would mess with it or not. So now it says that each value here requires a new configuration. So I said I want to add a material type stainless steel, zinc plated. My stainless steel is going to have a designation of SS. My zinc plated is going to be ZP. And when I come back to the configuration tree, you'll see now I have a custom property listed underneath my general properties. It says material, and it's default unchecked to start with. It has a button there for edit and delete. On the right side, you'll see the material list building in, which allows me to see before I turn on that custom property what's going to come with it. Okay? So we're looking at just doing zinc plated and stainless steel. My next frame here, I've got it checked. You'll see those two highlight. I can enable or disable those material types per fastener as well. Okay. Now this custom property, when you add it, say I'm adding it to this fastener, it doesn't add it to just a specific fastener. It adds material as a custom property to the entire toolbox. That's why it comes in default turned off right away. You can check it on for anything you want after you create that custom property, okay? So you really do have the ability to add materials to the broad range of all of your parts rather easily. All right, this will be a little bit easier. We're going to blow up this corner here, that corner at the end. We're going to blow that up. And there's a tiny little checkbox right there. It's just got 3 little lines on it, kind of looks like a browse button. Underneath that button, yes, sir.
Well, I wanted to go back to your point.
Yeah.
Is that really a good strategy to do with Toolbox, to have materials like that and essentially double your possible configurations by doing that? Because I've thought about actually just copying that standard. Mm-hmm. We have stainless fasteners, and then we have, like zinc or low carbon. More than likely in a design, the guys that are using the stainless fasteners, they're not going to go and start pulling out other ones. And when you load that file up.
Well, I guess the only saving grace by making a configuration is if you start off using the wrong material and you have it in 2 separate locations, you have to replace the component or redrop it in and remate it, So if it's a configuration, it's a simple switch. Right. And it's in there. The configurations, like I said, they don't create unless you actually use it. And, having your specific materials, if it's something that you do often where you have a variety, I would probably keep it in there as a configuration versus make it separate little parts. Okay? Okay. So this button here has a huge potential to it, okay? This one has some powerful stuff underneath it, and it doesn't say anywhere by floating over it or whatever what this is until you click it. Once you click that button, you're going to get the ability to import, export your configurations to Excel. Okay? This means instead of going tab, tab, tab through each of those little property boxes, you can spit it out to a spreadsheet, grab a whole section of stuff you don't want in your configuration list, delete it all out, add your custom properties, everything all in one shot, re-import it back into SOLIDWORKS, and it'll make the changes for you. Well, there's pretty much your customization right there. That thing alone there will save you time like you won't believe. Okay, just go in there and start configuring and messing around with those little check boxes and you'll be sick of that in a hurry. So that's there. The other thing that it has is a very dangerous tool. It has a little button that says create all configurations. Well, in this last configuration set, I had about 65,000 configurations. Well, if you got a whole lot of time on your hands and maybe you got a lot of extra network space, go ahead and push it and it'll take care of both of those things for you. Don't do that, please. But I want you to be aware that it's there. Okay, so, yes, sir.
Question on your design table there. You've actually gone through, you steered away from smart fasteners because we had specific descriptions and everything of the fasteners. We built our own design table.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at that design table, we essentially blank it out and put in our own design table. And then that would then run with the smart fasteners. So we can utilize the whole wizard of smart fastener capability.
Probably not, because did you actually take the toolbox fastener out to make your configurations, or did you built it from scratch? It probably won't, because the different thread length and thread display configuration information, all the data for driving the length of the part is going to be tied to dimension names and values that you don't have in your part. And bringing your data in, yeah, we'd have to really try that one out.
For instance, you have over there, you got description.
Mm-hmm.
And it's blank right now. I know in the design table, you have you don't have a part number in it, see the blank number you can read.
Right.
But if we enter the existing design table, put in, for instance, we use description, size, and material. If we took just that portion of our existing design table and put it into this one.
I really don't know that it would work out, because really what's driving this table in the background, it's not reading it like an actual design table. This is a data table, and it's using SQL in the background to drive the functionality of the toolbox. So unless it's actually specifically laid out like this, I really don't think it's going to drive very well. Yes. Yes. Yes, correct. Yeah, exactly. You could use your tables for that. Let's say line them up, copy your columns out, drop them in here as properties, but you're going to have to make sure they're lined up with the right configurations. So if you've got it trimmed down pretty well already, that might be your option there, really. Usually when I have somebody that wants to add functionality to the toolbox, I'll say, start with something existing, add to it what you want. The most likely scenario where you're going to have a functioning toolbox component after that is to start with one that's already been there, okay? It doesn't matter if it's going to be a different screw type or whatever. I mean, literally just start with something there first, okay? Any other questions? Go ahead.
Can you actually add lengths?
Oh yeah.
Make it easy configuration?
Sure. The size, diameter, length of the screw or whatever. You click that little add button, it'll give you a whole line to fill in a brand new value. Yes, sir.
Is this only for fresh installed toolbox, or what if you have some toolbox that's out there?
Mm-hmm.
What happens to those?
Every time you do an upgrade, SOLIDWORKS browser file that's out there in your data folder, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but SOLIDWORKS converts that database file to the next version. So anything that's already been entered into it or parts that you have existing will be converted along the way. Back in 2011 to 2012, there was a change that they made to the toolbox that took all of the fastener data out of the Access database. And it left only the Hole Wizard data in there. What they did with that toolbox data was to push it into the file header of the actual part files. Now I did this for two reasons, okay? One of the reasons was it worked better with ePDM if it was in the part, okay? Then you're only accessing one database and not two. The other thing that it did was it made your load time for configurations and dropping that toolbox part out when you drag it out. You get that long little wait, like, uh-oh, is SOLIDWORKS crashing on me? What's going on here? Oh, there's my fastener. That went away. Once that data was in the file, you pull it in, it's right there now, okay? So a couple things that that happened during that process is where that came in. Now, there was some problems with that at that time, and I did a presentation a few years ago on how to fix that. So I spent about 1.5 years fighting that with all my customers. But what eventually came out of it is now the toolbox is rolling forward. All of your fasteners have the data in them. When did you start with your SOLIDWORKS? 8 years ago? All right, so you've got a relatively old toolbox that's been rolling forward with you then. When did you start adding data to it?
We don't use it properly. There's random fasteners and modified copies.
Okay. Yeah. I would probably talk to your VAR and see if there's a good way to convert that. If you notice that it's not rolling with it and that you look at those toolbox parts in your newer version, if they're not there, contact your VAR and see if they can help you piece it back together again, okay? All right, get back on here. All right, so we did the copy. The copy function, again, similar to the Hole Wizard copy, this copy will allow you to take a whole group of standards or parts and pull them into a different folder. You can cut them, copy, or delete entire chunks right from here. All right, the next tab is out of the customization of the actual hardware and more into the user setting customization. Create configurations. This is another controversial spot for a lot of people, and we kind of touched on it already. I generally tell people, use the create configuration settings. I've got PDM guys that are fighting me saying, make parts. Look, if you have to change your fastener, you're going to have to replace it if you make parts. If it's a configuration, it's a switch. Just throw the switch and move it to the next configuration. I don't care how you guys want to do it. If you want to, use up a bunch of storage space, making a part for every 65,000 possible configurations, go ahead. If you have to change that part 65,000 times in your lifetime, you're going to have to do that too. It's a two-way street, but if you were to ask me, I'm always going to tell you to use the configurations. Create parts. We just talked about that a little bit. Then there's this option. Create parts on control drag. So for a standard drag, it behaves like create configurations. So just drag it out, configuration. Control drag says, make a copy of my part in the toolbox. I would probably not use that one either. There's an awful lot of times where you get new users and they're used to pulling the stuff off the tree and they're control dragging to get another copy of the part in. They start doing that to your toolbox parts. All of a sudden, you got stuff everywhere. All right. I would probably stay out of that. All right. And then you have the line that says create parts in this folder, and that's where all your copy parts go. Writing to read-only files. SOLIDWORKS does a little trick here. If it's a read-only file, SOLIDWORKS will go into the file, throw the read-only switch off of it, write the data it needs, and then put it back on. Nice little trick. But there is some options where that does not happen. If your permissions to the folder aren't good enough, or it's an actual security setting, you won't be able to function in the toolbox, okay? It will kick you out. It will not let you do the changes. If it's just a read-only mark, SOLIDWORKS will take care of it for you and keep moving on like nothing ever happened. Unless, of course, you check the other box. Instead of always change, you have error when writing. Then you won't get the uncheck option, and you'll probably get a bunch of calls, why can't I add a configuration to my part? All right, allow duplicate part numbers. Do with that one as you will. I don't think you should ever have duplicate part numbers, so I probably would never check that box either. Seems kind of redundant to me, but it's actually allow duplicate part numbers for geometrically equal components. Again, I really don't know why you'd want to allow that. All right. Show as component name in Feature Manager, show part number in BOM, and show description in BOM. These are 3 settings that you can actually set and change whatever value you want on those little drop-down boxes. Whatever's in there, you can let it fly for any of those 3 options. And you can say, yeah, I don't want to use the component name, I want to use the configuration name or configuration description or whatever's available for you. Permissions. All right. This is the button that allows you to add the password if you so choose to do so. If you're the administrator, you're probably going to want to do that at some point in time, but you know, once you've locked everybody out of it, now it's your responsibility, and don't forget your password. There's a lot of data in there. Don't mess it up. All right. This allows editing content. You can specifically allow the users to do certain things. So you can still put the password on and then tell them, you know, what version of it that they're going to have versus what you get with the password. All right, so allow editing content. You can allow editing custom properties. You can allow adding of parts to Toolbox. Allow editing of part numbers. Allow editing of configuration file name. Under the user settings, you can set up actions for one user or all users. And you can also change that for smart fasteners, which brings us to the smart fasteners tab. Inside your smart fasteners, we have show washer sizes that match fastener criteria, typically unrestricted. That's probably okay. Your Toolbox usually does a pretty good job of picking the right washer for your stuff, right? No? Yes? Maybe? All right. Or you can give it a percentage. Automatic fastener change fastener length to ensure minimum thread engagement. That might be a good one to have on in some cases, or change stack components with fastener when fastener size is changed. Those are all a couple of things there too. Automatic fastener change. Okay. Oop, one more thing on there. At the bottom, if you ever wondered why when you inserted a smart fastener and you got a socket head cap screw for no reason, probably because somebody didn't use a hole wizard to make the hole you just populated. And when that happens, this little line here says fastener for use with non-hole wizard holes. That's why you got a cap screw. You want to put something else in there? Go ahead. All right. So, the configuration stuff, pretty much done. And you guys will have access to all these slides and all the notes on there. SOLIDWORKS will make this all public for you guys. Here's a trick. Removing the toolbox flag. How and where? How? By using SOLIDWORKS attribute tool called set.prop.exe. Anybody use it yet? Oh, good, good, good. So where is this? It is the command that removes your toolbox file property, right? So first off, what it is, it removes that little flag. Now remember I said the flag that says, hey, default location here? If you want to take that flag off the parts that you make, so I'm going to save a part specifically cut to this length, and I'm going to give it a new name, and I'm going to put it in my design library, and I don't want SOLIDWORKS to mess with it again. You have to take the flag off of it. This tool does that for you, okay? Where is it? It is in your standard SOLIDWORKS installation location. Every machine has this tool on it, okay? Every user has it. It's in your C drive. your program, wherever you install, it could be anywhere, but typically it'll be C program files, SOLIDWORKS Corp, SOLIDWORKS, Toolbox, Data Utilities, set.prop.exe. This is what it looks like. This little baby here has one little button up here that makes all the difference. Yes, no. Both sides, right? Yes, no. It's not exactly worded good. All it says is set document property. Property state, yes. Property state, no. Thanks, guys. The property state yes says, yes, this is a toolbox part. Anybody use that search feature inside of SOLIDWORKS? There's a little search that says search toolbox components. And what it does is it searches for toolbox yes. Okay? That's how it works. So when SOLIDWORKS opens up a file, it sees toolbox yes, and then it goes to find that toolbox part. So we're going to tell it, no, you can do it by individual files or entire folders. And then you set it to no, say update status, and that would take care of that. No, it's still your file, okay? But instead of telling SOLIDWORKS that it's a toolbox part, it just tells SOLIDWORKS it's a part. So in the tree, like, yeah, when you go into the SOLIDWORKS model, the assembly model, in the feature tree, next to a toolbox component, you'll see a little fastener symbol, right? When you take that flag off and you go look at that same part, it'll be a yellow T-shaped block. It actually recognizes it as an SLDPRT file, regular one, as before, okay? Manually updating the toolbox. Yes, sometimes we have to do that. This is not for everybody, okay? This is a administrator type thing to do, okay? Typically this happens on an install. Maybe there was a read-only going on. You guys had users in the toolbox when it was going on. And something failed to write. Sometimes it's an admin image push that doesn't go well. And your toolbox kicks out. And you might even get in this failed install, okay? Go back in, check it out, yep. All right, so one trick on the admin image to get that to flow through is to just change the setting to write a toolbox to C folder, okay? C, SOLIDWORKS data, and just dump one on the individual user, okay? What happens then is it just writes one local and it doesn't have to worry about permissions anywhere else because there shouldn't be anybody in it. If it does come back then, and you look at after the admin image pushes and it didn't update, then you're going to have to start doing a manual process, or you can try to run the repair off the SOLIDWORKS Installation Manager. Best idea ever? Anybody guess what it is? Back up that toolbox. Before you attempt to manually update, back it up, back it up, back it up, back it up. Default location is C SOLIDWORKS data. We talked about that a little bit already. And we've also talked about SOLIDWORKS data 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, however many times you've installed SOLIDWORKS. You might have a folder with a handy-dandy little parentheses number behind it. This is a problem when you're trying to manually update the toolbox because now you don't know which freaking one it was. Right? There it is. Okay. If you followed all the tricks so far, you would have gone in and said, hey, I made SOLIDWORKS 2015 and I'm going to 2016. When my update fails to install, what toolbox am I going to upgrade? My 2015 one, right? I named it. We're all good. Know exactly which one it is. That folder naming can be done during the install process. You can go back and change it later on, but then you have to switch your options, repoint to it, okay? So try to do it during your install. Okay. Manually updating the toolbox. A couple tools that we do. The first one is the Database Converter EXE, new for 2015. Who's on 15 right now? Okay, do you have any problems upgrading your toolbox from 14 to 15? Nobody? Cool. All right.
Just the error in service pack 1 makes all those crashes.
Okay. Just that one. We had a couple people call in with this where it didn't update very good. And that's where I built these slides from because I had to do it. So the previous versions you could manually update in 2 steps. In 2011 it was only 1 step. 2012 it became 2 or 20 steps, whatever. I've got a presentation out there. Write this down if you will, cati.com, and you're going to look for, at the very bottom of the page, is a Tech Notes blog. If you go on that blog and search Toolbox, you'll find the first release run of this, which is our 4-part series on Toolbox. Most of the presentation is from there. The other thing you'll find in there eventually is the 2011 to 12/13 upgrade that really goes through to fix the original problem. If you haven't upgraded past 12 yet, you may want to check that one out first. And then you're going to come into this. So this version now, we took SOLIDWORKS Toolbox from an Access database, and it's now an SQL file. Everybody knows that or not? Okay? Yeah. It's now, instead of an SLD MDB, you have the SLD EDB. Yep. Ooh. This is the desert. All right. So the first thing we have to do to manually do this is we have to go from the old file, the MDB file, to the SQL file. This first tool does that, databaseconverter.exe. So what it does is it says, where's your source file? This is your MDB file, this is a source file. Destination file, SLD-EDB. Runs that, hit convert, takes a little while. I did it for you, so it's green already. And then, update browser database EXE. This is the one we all ran before. So the first one is the new step. That's just for 2014 to 15. Then you have the update browser database EXE. That looks like this. Everybody seen this one before or not quite yet? If you've done a manual upgrade in the past, you've probably seen this thing already. This one converts the newly converted MDB to SQL file to the new version of Toolbox for this release. So you're going to step it from 17.0 to 18.14. That's what the upgrade should have done for you up to this point. It should have done both of these tools already. Now, before the last tool, I found it best to do a little bit of renaming before you run the last tool. First off, you're going to rename these folders. The updates folder will be renamed. I typically just put old behind it. Updates space old. Fine, good enough. You'll also be renaming the Toolbox Standards XML file. Toolbox Standard XML old, great choice too. Next, Toolbox Files.index. This is inside the browser folder. SOLIDWORKS data, browser, index file, okay? The other two files, sorry about that, were C drive, SOLIDWORKS data. C SOLIDWORKS data updates, Toolbox Standards.xml, inside the browser folder, Toolbox Files.index. Once those are done, SOLIDWORKS pretty much doesn't know anything about your toolbox, okay? It has file locations, but it has no idea what the content is yet, okay? And some of the stuff I've done in the repairs, we've had to rename this stuff just to get it to reload all the data into the toolbox, okay? So then the last tool we run is in our SOLIDWORKS installation folder again, program file, SOLIDWORKS Corp, SOLIDWORKS. Mine has 2 of them on there because I'm running multiple versions. But it would just be SOLIDWORKS Corp, SOLIDWORKS. And in that main root folder, you'll see SOLIDWORKS Toolbox Updater.exe. To run this particular program, you will need to know where the SOLIDWORKS database that you're trying to fix is actually located. What happens is this program will use your Hole Wizard / Toolbox file location out of your option settings. It uses that location. It doesn't ask you for it here, okay? It assumes that location from the registry. Then I usually check the box for show completed updates, and then you have to tell it where your installation media is. Does anybody know what's on the installation media that thing's looking for? There's a folder there with Toolbox. It just says Toolbox. Inside there's ANSI zip, metric zip, all this stuff is in there, okay? And those files are what it extracts to populate your toolbox with. So as you go down these little green checks, you get analyze, update, analyze, update, analyze, update, and then all of a sudden you'll see like ANSI, DIN, ISO, and it'll go through and check all of them as it converts those. When you see the process button return, and when you're running it, it'll say cancel. When it finally comes back and says process on the bottom again, down here, then it finished. That's the only indication you have that it's done. Okay. X's and uh-ohs. If you run this tool, hopefully you don't see any of these. The renaming stuff that I did on the previous slides is what helps you not have this happen, okay? Some of these are good, some of these are bad. You can see the green check marks are good ones, obviously. The exclamation points are warnings. The X's are failures. You can click on that button and it will tell you which parts it failed on. That's actually pretty nice. And when you're going through that list, you might go, oh, well, that's a copied part from a, or that's an old part, it's got a bad name to it, or that's probably from our 2008 toolbox and it didn't update right 12 times already. That's fine, I know about it, we'll move on. Or you might get lucky and say, oh, it's in DIN and I'm not using that anyways, so I'm just gonna move on with life, okay? And then you can remove that folder later on. EPDM. We're just going to talk briefly about this one. EPDM and your toolbox. If you have entered your toolbox into the PDM system, a few things must happen. 1, all users should check in their assemblies before upgrading toolbox. Yes. 2, all users should close SOLIDWORKS to prevent any file in use errors. This is the mass deployment issue where write access is denied. Thirdly, toolbox will need to be checked out in whole, the entire folder. Great time to make a copy. You're checking out the data folder anyways. While you got it in front of you, grab a zip file. And 4, you'll need to force SOLIDWORKS to point to the checked out toolbox, not the current location where it is inside the vault. You'll need to bump out and repoint SOLIDWORKS to where that location is. You can just open up your SOLIDWORKS Toolbox Hole Wizard location and just change it right there and then run your updates. And then check it back in when you're finished. Any questions? Go ahead.
If your company started out using create a part for every different configuration, and you change that setting to create configurations, what happens to all those files, or like what's the ramifications?
Well, the toolbox will still maintain those parts, but I mean, you're still going to have to replace those eventually, with the one that has all the configurations in it. If it's legacy data, it should be fine just to leave it.
So any new part created
Will be
file with configurations.
correct. And it's fine to leave them in your copied parts folder, whatever you're doing with them. Leave it there so it doesn't miss them on the install load. You should be good just to open the assembly. It'll find the parts and use them where they are. Everything new going forward will have your configurations built into it and so on. The storage space on it, I don't know how much you've got tied up in it now. It's maybe not too much. Maybe it's not a big deal. So.
Well, they said years ago they had it where before I worked there, they had it where it made configurations. But the file itself got so big that they felt like it was slowing down assemblies.
Right.
The file had 10,000 configurations.
In the last couple of versions now, in the tools options, there's a checkbox that says purge configuration data.
Yeah.
Flip that on, that'll go away. 2015 files are much smaller too, so we have seen file reduction quite a bit actually in most applications. So, all right. Other things for you guys, quick. The rest of the CATI stuff, where I'm from, and our Inflow is our EPDM sister company. You guys are in these last three here, already done. But tomorrow we have some stuff going on. Duct tape and baling wire, creative solutions to everyday problems. That's Adrian Fanjoy and Josh Altergott. They were running a performance one down the hall here while we were in here. EPDM web, how to build, maintain effective design tables. That's Josh as well. And DriveWorks Express essentials hands-on. Okay? All right. Well, thank you all for coming.